What if I told you that one of the most important meals you eat all week might not be breakfast or lunch or dinner? It might be the very first meal you eat after a fast. Now, that statement surprises a lot of people because we've spent the last several episodes talking about what happens when you stop eating. We've explored insulin, ketosis, autophagy, metabolic flexibility, and the incredible ways your body begins adapting when it's given a break from constantly digesting food. But today, I want to tell you the other half of the story because fasting was never meant to exist by itself. If you've watched this series from the beginning, you've probably noticed that I keep coming back to one idea over and over again. It is that health is not about extremes. It's about rhythms. Day and night, work and rest, activity and recovery. Breathing in, breathing out. Our entire existence is built on rhythms. If your heart only squeezed and never relaxed, you wouldn't survive. If you only inhaled and never exhaled, life would end really within minutes. If you stayed awake for days without sleep, even though we wish we could, wouldn't that be so productive? But no, eventually your brain would force you to rest whether you wanted to or not. Life itself depends on knowing when to do something and when to stop doing it. So I think eating is exactly the same way. We've spent decades asking, what should I eat? But maybe an equally important question is, when should I stop eating? And after we've answered that, another question naturally follows. What should happen when I begin eating again? Because fasting, it's not the finish line. It's halftime. It's intermission. It's the pause between two beautiful movements in the same symphony. One movement is repair and the other is rebuilding. One clears away what is damaged and the other is going to provide the materials to build something stronger. But the problem is our culture has become really good at talking about one without the other. Some people believe food alone will heal everything, and others act as if fasting is the answer to every health problem. I really don't believe either extreme tells the whole story. I think they belong together. Imagine hiring a construction crew to renovate your home. And the guys arrive carrying dumpsters and pry bars and hammers, and they remove mold and they tear out rotten wood and stripped damaged drywall. What else? They could pull up old carpet, and for days, the house really is going to look worse instead of better. I have gone through this when we were trying to remodel the downstairs, adding in a couple bedrooms at our last house. We needed another room to complete our adoption process. And based on the minimum rooms required, we had to finish a couple rooms. And the dust, oh my goodness, even though it was just part of the downstairs being remodeled, the dust was everywhere. And if you would have walked in during that phase, you'd probably wonder if anything was actually going to improve. But the demolition was not the goal, it was preparation. And once the damaged material is removed, a second crew can arrive. And they don't bring dumpsters, they bring lumber or drywall or new wiring, paint, cabinets, whatever your particular project requires. And suddenly the house begins coming back to life. Neither crew could have finished the project alone. If the demolition crew never left, there would never be a home. Like they couldn't just keep tearing down forever. And if the rebuilding crew arrived before the damaged material was removed, they'd be building on top of a broken foundation. Health works the same way. Fasting, it's often part of the cleanup crew. Eating becomes part of the rebuilding crew. Both matter. Both have a purpose. Both require wisdom. And here's what I think we've unintentionally gotten confused and lost our way. We've become fascinated with the cleanup while forgetting to ask whether we're rebuilding with quality materials. Imagine spending 24 hours carefully cleaning every room of your house. You scrub the floors, wash every window, vacuum every corner, even maybe move the fridge to clean out underneath it. Everything shines. And then you back a garbage truck into the driveway and dump it right into your living room. No one would do that, at least not intentionally. Yet many of us unknowingly do something remarkably similar. We fast, and our insulin begins falling. Our digestive system finally gets a chance to slow down, and stored energy begins supplying some of our needs. So our metabolic system starts to try and balance and becomes a little bit flexible. The body shifts into one of the remarkable survival programs we've been discussing throughout this series. And then the very first meal we eat is a drive-through combo, right? Washed down with a giant sugary drink, followed by dessert, because after all, we did earn it, right? Now, please hear me carefully. This is not about making you feel guilty. I don't believe shame has ever helped someone get healthier. It just doesn't. If you've watched this channel for very long, you already know that's not how I teach. This is about understanding. Because once we understand what's happening, our choices begin making a lot more sense. One of the biggest shifts that happened in my own thinking wasn't learning another list of foods I should or shouldn't eat. It was realizing that food is constantly talking to our bodies. Every bite carries information, not just calories, it's information. Now, that sounds strange at first because we've been taught to think of food almost entirely as fuel. Calories in, calories out, burn more than you eat, and your problems are solved. But your body doesn't experience food that way. Your immune system doesn't. Your hormones don't. Your gut bacteria certainly doesn't. Every cell in your body is constantly listening for nutrients, amino acids, fatty acids, glucose, listening for vitamins, listening for minerals, listening for thousands of chemical signals that tell your body what kind of environment it's living in. Think about that for a moment. The meal sitting on your plate isn't simply becoming energy. The meal, it's becoming instructions. Your body is asking, should we store this? Should we build with this? Should we repair? Should we release insulin? Are nutrients plentiful or are we under stress? Do we have enough protein? Can we support the immune system and can we maintain muscle? It's almost as though every meal is another conversation between you and your biology and the environment. And whether we realize it or not, our bodies answer every single time. Now, before we go any further, I think we need to talk about something that I believe has unintentionally confused millions of people. We've reduced food down to mathematics, calories, macros, points, percentages, numbers. Now, don't misunderstand me. Those things can absolutely be useful in the right context. But if numbers were the entire story, then 500 calories of soda should have exactly the same effect as 500 calories of salmon, vegetables, berries, and walnuts. They're both 500 calories on paper, but not inside the living human body. One meal delivers protein, omega-3s, vitamins, minerals, fiber, and countless naturally occurring compounds that researchers are still discovering. The other delivers mostly rapidly absorbed sugar with really very little else. Same calories, but very different conversation with your cells. That's why I think one of the greatest misunderstandings in nutrition is believing calories and nourishment are interchangeable. They're related, but they aren't identical. You can consume enough calories while still leaving your body hungry for what it actually needs. And perhaps that's one reason for so many people describing feeling full, yet somehow still unsatisfied. Because fullness isn't always nourishment, sometimes it's simply volume. And that distinction changes everything when we think about breaking a fast. Because after allowing your digestive system to rest and giving your metabolism time to shift gears, after allowing your body to begin drawing upon stored energy, what kind of conversation do you want your very next meal to have with your body? That's the question I want to explore together. Because I don't think breaking a fast should feel like the end of self control. I think it should feel like the beginning of intentional nourishment. And once I started looking at it that way, something inside me shifted. Not overnight and not perfectly, but permanently. The more I learned about the human body, the less amazed I became by nutrition, and the more amazed I became by the designer behind it. Because the deeper scientists look, the more complicated the conversation becomes. When I was growing up, nutrition often it sounded fairly simple. Protein builds muscle, carbohydrates give you energy, fat makes you fat, eat your vegetables, avoid sugar. There was some truth mixed into those ideas, but the longer researchers have studied human physiology, the more they've realized that our bodies don't operate like a simple machine. They're alive. They're constantly adapting, constantly responding, constantly changing. Think about this for just a minute. Right now, without you thinking about it, your heart is beating, your lungs are expanding, your kidneys are filtering your blood, your liver's processing nutrients, and your immune system is patrolling for viruses and bacteria, and your brain is sorting through millions of pieces of information. Your digestive system is coordinating hormones and enzymes, nerves, bacteria, and muscles all without asking your permission. You don't consciously tell your pancreas how much insulin to release. You don't decide which stomach enzymes to produce. You don't manually move nutrients into your cells. It all happens because your body was designed with astonishing intelligence. And that's why I hesitate whenever someone promises that one food or one supplement or one diet will magically fix everything. No, because health has never depended on one thing. It's an orchestra, hundreds, maybe thousands of systems playing together. If one section plays beautifully while the others are ignored, the music still suffers. That's one of the reasons I love talking about fasting. Not because fasting is magic, but because fasting reminds us that our bodies already know how to do remarkable things when we stop constantly interrupting them. Today, I want to add another thought. Food it doesn't replace those remarkable systems. Food supports them. It provides the raw materials. Imagine trying to build a beautiful brick house and you hire the best architect, the best builder, the best engineers. Everyone knows exactly where they should be and what they should be doing. But instead, every morning of delivering bricks, the supply truck drops off cardboard boxes. Hmm. The workers are incredibly skilled, but they can't build a brick house with cardboard. Eventually, someone might walk by and say, those builders may not know what they're doing. But the problem wasn't the workers. The problem was the building materials. And I wonder how often we do something similar to our own bodies. We expect incredible performance while providing very little of what our bodies were designed to work with. Now, before anyone misunderstands me, I'm not suggesting perfection. Please don't hear perfection. Life is meant to be enjoyed. Birthday cake belongs at birthday parties, and grandma's pie belongs at Thanksgiving. Ice cream with your kids on a summer evening, those moments matter. Health isn't destroyed by occasional celebration. More often, it is shaped by ordinary repetition. It's the breakfast you eat most mornings, the snacks you reach for every afternoon, the dinner that shows up on your table week after week. It's the patterns, far more than the exceptions. I actually find that encouraging because it means you don't have to get everything right. You simply need your ordinary days moving in the right direction. And here's something fascinating. Your body is remarkably forgiving. It's constantly trying to help you. If you've watched my channel for a while, you've probably heard me say something like this before. Your body is not your enemy. It is fighting for you. Even when you're exhausted, even when you're inflamed, and when the blood sugar is just out of control, and when you've spent years eating foods that weren't serving you well, your body doesn't wake up each morning wondering how to sabotage you. It wakes up trying to keep you alive, trying to repair, trying to adapt, to compensate. It is trying to survive. And sometimes we speak about our bodies almost like they're broken machines. My body hates me, or my metabolism is ruined, or my immune system is attacking me. Now, I understand why people say those things, especially if you've lived with chronic illness. Believe me, I understand that feeling. Personally, having multiple sclerosis, there have been seasons in my own life when it felt like my body had become something I couldn't trust. Living with multiple sclerosis has taught me what it feels like to question my own body and to wonder why it won't cooperate, to wonder why symptoms appear without warning, and to wonder if I'm ever going to feel normal again. Like those are real emotions, and I am not dismissing them. But over the years, something beautiful began changing inside of me. Instead of seeing my body as my opponent, I slowly began seeing it as my teammate. Not perfect, not invincible, but incredibly resilient. Even with MS, my body has continued trying to heal every single day. My skin still repairs cuts, and my bones are still remodeling themselves, and my liver still detoxifies. My muscles still respond when I challenge them, and my immune system still protects me from countless infections I never even know I'm encountering. Healing isn't absent, it's happening constantly. Sometimes it's simply overwhelmed. That shift changed the questions that I began asking. Instead of asking, why is my body failing me? I started asking, how can I better support the incredible work it's already trying to do? And that one question transformed so much because once you see your body as an ally, you stop trying to punish it. You stop declaring war against it. You stop chasing miracle cures every other week. And instead, you begin asking, why does my body feel this way? What does my body actually need from me? Sometimes the answer is movement, sometimes it's sleep, sometimes it's managing stress or reconnecting with people you love. Sometimes it's fasting, and sometimes it's finally giving your body the nourishment it's been asking for all along. Which brings us back to that first meal after a fast. Imagine your cells have spent the last day quietly reorganizing. Insulin has come down, stored glycogen has been used, your digestive system has had a chance to slow its constant workload, and your body has shifted into a different metabolic state. Now imagine opening the front door and asking, what would be the most helpful thing I could bring inside? Hmm. Not the most exciting, not the most comforting, not the fastest, the most helpful. I think that's a beautiful way to approach nutrition. Not asking, what am I allowed to eat? But asking, what would genuinely help my body today? Those are two very different questions. One is driven by rules, and the other is driven by stewardship. And stewardship has always been far more interesting, to me at least, than restriction, because stewardship begins with gratitude. It says, this body is a gift. I didn't design it. I don't fully understand everything it does, but I can choose whether I care for it well. That mindset doesn't create fear around food, it creates appreciation. It changes eating from an argument into an opportunity. And I think that's where fasting has been quietly leading us all along. Not toward eating less, but toward appreciating more. Have you ever noticed how a tiny text message can completely change your day? Sometimes it's only 3 words. I'm proud of you, or I love you, or call me. The message itself weighs almost nothing. And if you could put it on a scale, it would barely register. Yet those few words really can change your emotions, your decisions, even the direction of your entire day based on who it's coming from and the idea behind it. Information doesn't have to be heavy to be powerful. And I think food works much the same way. Yes, food contains calories, and calories are simply a measure of energy. And your body certainly, absolutely, it needs energy. But food also carries instructions. It tells your body what kind of world that you're living in. Think about it. If you constantly eat enough protein, your body receives the message, we have the building blocks to repair. And if you consistently eat foods rich in vitamins and minerals, your body receives the message, we have the tools that we need for thousands of chemical reactions. And if you eat foods containing healthy fats, your cells receive materials to help maintain membranes and produce hormones and support many normal body functions. If you eat fiber regularly, you're not actually feeding yourself very much. You're feeding trillions of tiny organisms living inside you. And we'll come back to that in just a minute. The point is, every meal becomes more than fuel. It becomes communication. Now, I want to be careful here because nutrition science is incredibly complex. If you've ever watched two experts debate nutrition, you've probably noticed they can look at the same research and sometimes reach different conclusions. That's because human beings are wonderfully complicated. Age matters, genetics matter, activity, it matters, medical conditions matter, stress matters, and sleep definitely matters. The foods available in different cultures matter. Even the bacteria living inside your intestines can influence how you respond to certain foods. So whenever someone tells you they found the one perfect diet for every person, I become a little skeptical. You should too. Because biology really isn't that simple. But despite all of that complexity, there are some remarkably consistent themes that continue showing up across decades of research. Whole foods tend to support health better than heavily processed foods. Colorful fruits and vegetables provide compounds our bodies appear to benefit from. Adequate protein becomes increasingly important as we age. Fiber consistently shows up as something most people don't consume enough of. And diets centered around minimally processed foods are repeatedly associated with better long-term health outcomes across really all groups of people. Let's be realistic. Now, researchers are continually debating the details, like how much carbs, how much fat, exactly what ratio. And those conversations will probably continue for years. No, probably forever. But the broader picture has become surprisingly consistent. Nature generally packages food remarkably well. And perhaps that's not an accident. One of the things that fascinates me most isn't what scientists have already discovered. It's what they keep discovering. Every few years, another study comes along identifying compounds in plants that weren't even on anyone's radar 20 years ago, like polyphenols and flavonoids or carotenoids or glucosinolates or anthocyanins, like names that sound more like chemistry homework than dinner. Yet these naturally occurring compounds are now being studied for how they interact with inflammation, oxidative stress, blood vessels, metabolism, and just countless other systems. Now, does that mean eating blueberries cures disease? No, I'm sorry. I wish it did. Wouldn't that be nice? But no, that's a leap the evidence doesn't support. But it does remind us of something incredibly important. Food is far more complicated than calories. It's a symphony of nutrients and naturally occurring compounds that interact with our biology in ways we're still trying to understand. Sometimes I wonder if we've become so focused on what science hasn't proven, like, has it caused us to overlook the incredible things that it already has? Like, here's an example. This is what I mean. Like vitamin C. Most people know it's important, but why? It's because it's involved in making collagen, supporting immune function, helping protect cells from oxidative stress, and much more. Magnesium, it's involved in hundreds of biochemical reactions throughout the body. Hundreds. Vitamin D, it's important for bone health, immune regulation, and a lot of other processes that scientists are really still studying and will continue to. Omega 3 fats. Researchers have explored their role in heart health and brain function, inflammation, and beyond. Protein, it's not just about bodybuilders. Like every day, your body repairs tissues, produces enzymes. It builds hormones and supports immune cells and maintains muscle, all of which require amino acids, which is protein. The more you learn, the more you realize your body is constantly rebuilding itself, which brings me back to something we've talked about throughout this series. Fasting often creates the opportunity for repair. Nutrition supplies many of the raw materials for rebuilding, and one without the other leaves part of the story unfinished. Imagine, again, trying to repair a brick wall. First, you carefully remove the cracked bricks, and that's important, necessary even. But eventually, someone has to bring new bricks, mortar, tools, fresh materials. Otherwise, the wall simply remains empty. And that doesn't diminish the value of removing the damaged bricks. It just completes the process. And I think that's exactly how we should view the relationship between fasting and nourishment, not as competitors, but as partners. One creates opportunity, the other responds to it. One says, let's clear away what no longer serves us, and the other says, now let's build something beautiful in its place. That idea completely changes the way that we should be thinking about a fast. I stopped thinking, what am I craving? And I started asking, what has my body been patiently waiting for? I like that question because cravings and needs aren't always the same thing. Sometimes they overlap, sometimes they don't. Have you ever gone grocery shopping when you're really hungry? It's a bad idea because everything looks incredible. And you leave with cookies, chips, frozen pizza, ice cream, and somehow forgot half the things that you actually needed. Hunger has a way of making the loudest foods seem like the best foods. Now imagine instead that someone you deeply love has been recovering from an illness and they finally reach the point where they can start to eat again and you get to prepare their first meal. Would you think differently? I think most of us would. We wouldn't ask, what's the fastest thing I can throw together? No, we wouldn't ask that. We'd ask, what would help them regain strength? What is going to be gentle on their stomach? Like, what will nourish them? What will help them know that I love them? Now, here's the thought that stopped me in my tracks one day. Why don't we extend that same kindness to ourselves? Why do we so often prepare better meals for the people we love than for the body that carries us through every single day of our lives? Maybe part of stewardship is recognizing that caring for ourselves is not selfish. It's gratitude. It's acknowledging that this incredible body, imperfect though it may be, is still doing everything it can to try and keep me alive. It's trying to keep you alive. It is trying to keep us alive. And perhaps the first meal after a fast becomes one of the clearest opportunities we have each week to say, thank you. Not with words, but with nourishment. That's another part of the story that I think is almost impossible to hear for the first time without shaking your head in amusement. You are not alone. Now, before you think I've completely changed topics, stay with me. Right now, as you're sitting here watching this video, you are carrying around an entire living community inside your body. Not one organism, not a dozen, not 100. Trillions. Trillions. That's difficult for our minds to even picture. Scientists call this community the gut microbiome. It's made up of bacteria, fungi, viruses, and other microorganisms that naturally live in and on our bodies. Most of them are harmless, and many appear to play helpful roles in digestion, vitamin production, immune function, and metabolism. Researchers are still learning exactly how all of these interactions work, but one thing is becoming increasingly clear. This internal ecosystem matters. For years, bacteria had a terrible reputation. If you heard the word bacteria, you reached for disinfectant. Kill it, destroy it, get rid of it. Whew. And don't get me wrong, there are absolutely bacteria that can make us very sick. But researchers have also discovered that many bacteria aren't our enemies at all. In fact, without them, we couldn't even function normally. Think about how incredible that is. God designed us not as isolated creatures, but as living ecosystems. It's almost like your body is a beautiful garden. Every day, something is growing. The question isn't whether something will grow. The question is, what are we feeding? Imagine two gardens sitting side by side. Both receive sunshine, both receive rain, but one is filled with flowers, vegetables, healthy soil, bees, butterflies, and life. And the other becomes overrun with weeds because it has been neglected for years. The gardener doesn't usually fix the problem by screaming at the weeds. The gardener changes what the garden is receiving, like healthy soil, water, time, care, consistency. Little by little, the entire environment begins to change. In my front garden, I have the garden itself, but then I also have four large garden pots. They're like 30-gallon. And in each of them, I put in the same layered dirt and mulch and fertilizer. And I planted different things. But in one of them specifically, I just saw nothing good happening. It wasn't good. It wasn't growing. The flowers that I planted first didn't make. And then I put in chives and they were struggling. And then I put in the peace lily that I have had for almost a decade, thriving, and it was dying. Like, what is going on here? So I moved it to a different area with more sun. And then I moved it to a, I was really trying. I put in fertilizer and I tried watering it more. And then I realized that this particular pot did not have the holes popped out to allow the water to drain properly. Anyone that gardens, especially if you've done container or pot gardening, knows the water has to have a place to drain, especially as often as I was watering. There was no way for it to cycle because it wasn't getting a rest from the constant hydration. I was giving it the same amount of water and nourishment that all the other plants were getting, but they had ability to cleanse and release the excess water. This one did not. So I, of course, had to immediately move my plants and it will be adjusted. But I'm sharing this not because this is a gardening podcast or post, but because I think our bodies often work the same way. They're incredibly responsive to the environment we create for them. And one of the biggest parts of that environment is the food that we eat over and over again. Now, I want to make something very clear because this is an area where social media sometimes gets ahead of the science. The microbiome is one of the most exciting areas of modern research, but it is also one of the newest. Researchers continue discovering fascinating connections between the gut, immune system, the brain, metabolism, and overall health. And at the same time, a lot of questions remain unanswered. We don't know exactly which microbial changes cause certain outcomes and which are simply associated with them. That's an important distinction. Association doesn't always prove cause. Science moves carefully, and I think that's a good thing. It reminds us to stay curious without making promises the evidence hasn't earned. Still, even with those important cautions, one simple idea keeps showing up. The foods we repeatedly eat appear to influence the community living inside us. Fiber-rich foods, for example, are known to nourish many beneficial gut bacteria because those bacteria ferment certain types of fiber into compounds that can support colon health and have effects throughout the whole body. Think about it for a second. There are parts of your meal that you don't digest very well, and because they were never primarily intended to nourish you directly, but they become nourishment for the tiny helpers living inside you. When I first learned that, I couldn't stop thinking about it. It's almost like God packed a lunch inside your lunch. You eat the meal, and hidden within the same meal is food for another community that's working alongside you. How incredible is that? The deeper I study the human body, the harder it becomes for me to believe it's an accident. The layers, the interdependence, the elegance of it all points me toward intentional design. And whether someone watching this shares my faith or not, I hope we can all pause for a moment and simply appreciate the complexity because wonder is something we've lost far too easily. We live in a world where we can order groceries with our phones, talk to someone on the other side of the planet instantly, and learn almost anything in seconds. We've become so surrounded by remarkable things that we've stopped being amazed. But I think the human body deserves our amazement. It deserves our respect. It deserves our curiosity. Not because it's perfect, but because it's astonishing. And perhaps when we're astonished by something, we naturally begin caring for it differently. Have you ever watched a child discover the ocean for the first time? They're not calculating wave height and they're not measuring salinity and they're just standing there, eyes wide, completely captivated. And sometimes I wonder if that's how we should approach learning about our own bodies, not with fear, not with obsession, but with wonder, because wonder changes behavior far more deeply than shame ever will. No one has to force you to protect something that you genuinely treasure. You do it naturally. You don't throw your wedding ring into the junk drawer. You don't leave priceless family photographs out in the rain. You protect what you value. And maybe, just maybe, one of the reasons understanding our bodies matters so much is because appreciation naturally leads to stewardship. Which brings us back once again to that first meal after a fast. If you spent hours allowing your digestive system to rest, and if your body has been quietly shifting its metabolism, if you've created space for repair, then perhaps the question isn't, what can I get away with eating now? Perhaps the better question is, what kind of environment do I want to create inside me? Because every meal, whether we realize it or not, is helping shape that environment. Not perfectly or instantly, but consistently over months and years, consistency has a remarkable way of becoming destiny. Not because one meal changes everything, but because thousands of meals quietly become a life. So, after everything we've talked about, what should that first meal actually look like? If you've been waiting for me to tell you there's one perfect menu, I'm probably going to disappoint you because I don't believe there is one perfect meal for every human being. A 20-year-old college athlete has a different needs than an 80-year-old grandma. A pregnant mom has different nutritional needs than someone training for a marathon, although pregnancy can feel like a marathon. But someone recovering from surgery isn't in exactly the same place as someone managing type 2 diabetes. Context matters. Life matters. Individual health really matters. That's one of the reasons I get nervous when nutrition becomes too dogmatic. When someone says everyone should eat exactly this way, or no one should ever, never. Biology usually isn't quite that simple, but there are principles that seem to stand the test of time, and principles are far more valuable than rules. Rules tell you what to do. Principles help you understand why. And once you understand the why, you can make a wise decision in situations no rule book ever anticipated. So let's imagine you've just finished a fast. Maybe it was 16 hours, maybe 24, maybe even longer under appropriate medical guidance, and your body has been living from stored energy. Your digestive system has had a chance to slow down. Now, it's time to begin nourishing again. The first thing I ask myself isn't what sounds good, although I'll admit sometimes cinnamon rolls sound incredibly good. The first question I ask is, what would help my body recover well? Notice the difference. Not what have I earned, but what would serve me? That tiny shift completely changes the conversation because if food truly carries information, then I want the first message after a fast to be something like this. We are safe. We have what we need. Let's rebuild. One of the nutrients that immediately comes to mind is protein. Now, protein has become a bit of a celebrity lately. It is everything, right? It's in everything. Protein cereal, protein chips, protein cookies, protein ice cream. Guys, I recently bought for my kids just to try it protein Pop Tarts. What? Not good for you. I am not recommending it, but my kids like Pop-Tarts, and so I thought we would just give it a try, see if there's a difference. What the heck? They really didn't taste any different, but they had double the protein. Sometimes I wonder if we might even get like protein toothpaste or something. But beneath all the marketing, there's a really important truth. Protein matters. It does. And it's not because it's trendy. It's because your body literally uses amino acids, the building blocks of protein, to repair tissues and produce enzymes and support immune function and maintain muscle and carry out countless other normal processes. Think back to our construction analogy. If fasting was the cleanup crew, protein is one of the delivery trucks arriving with fresh lumber. Without building materials, construction slows. Now, that doesn't mean every meal needs to be enormous or that everyone needs the same amount, but it does remind us that rebuilding requires resources. Then there's another nutrient that has been understood for decades. I want to discuss fat. Poor fat. It has had quite the bad reputation for years. No one likes it. It's not popular. Many of us were taught that fat itself is the villain. Eat fat, you'll become fat. Simple. Except, what? Our bodies never really behaved that simply. They didn't. Healthy fats are components of our cell membranes. They play roles in, oh goodness, let's see, hormone production. They help us absorb fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K, all so important, and contribute to many normal physiological processes. Different types of fat have different effects, which is why quality and overall dietary patterns matter more than reducing all fat indiscriminately. And again, it's about understanding, not fearing. Fear rarely leads to wisdom. Understanding does. And then there's fiber. Can I confess something? Fiber is probably one of the least exciting nutrition topics imaginable. Nobody wakes up thinking, you know what I hope someone talks about today? Fiber. No, it doesn't exactly make for flashy headlines. But here's what's funny. The things that quietly support our health are often the least glamorous. Fiber helps to support healthy digestion. It contributes to feelings of fullness and nourishes the beneficial gut bacteria. Most people don't get enough of it. And despite decades of public health recommendations, simple, it's not glamorous, just consistently helpful. Fiber is helpful. Isn't that interesting? It's sometimes the most powerful habits that aren't dramatic, they're ordinary. Drinking enough water, getting enough sleep, walking regularly, eating vegetables, having meaningful relationships, managing stress. None of those usually go viral on social media, but together they quietly shape a healthy life. And I think we've become addicted to dramatic solutions: the 30-day miracle, the 7-day detox, the secret supplement nobody wants you to know about, the one weird trick. And yet, when you look at people who remain healthy for decades, their lives are usually built on remarkably ordinary habits, practiced remarkably consistently. That actually gives me hope because ordinary is achievable. Extraordinary every day is exhausting. Maybe health was never supposed to feel like surviving an impossible challenge. Maybe it was always supposed to feel like learning a rhythm. There's that word again. Rhythm. It keeps showing up. Sleep, wake, move, rest, fast, nourish, work, recover, laugh, pray, connect, breathe. It's almost as if every health system in creation follows a rhythm. Even the seasons. Spring doesn't apologize for becoming summer, and summer doesn't cling to autumn. Autumn eventually gives way to winter. Each season prepares for the next. None of them compete, they cooperate. Fasting and eating should cooperate too. One prepares the way, and the other continues the work. Here's something I don't think we talk about enough. Your relationship with food matters just as much as your food itself. Think about that. You can sit down to an incredibly nutritious meal while overwhelmed with guilt, fear, self-condemnation, or some type of shame. I shouldn't be eating. I already messed up. Oh, I have no self-control. I'm just going to start over on Monday. Those thoughts become part of the experience. I don't think God intended meals to become courtroom trials. I think meals were meant to become moments of gratitude. Think about families gathering around a table. Think about Jesus sharing meals with people. Think about celebrations throughout Scripture. Food wasn't merely fuel. It was fellowship. It was thanksgiving. It was hospitality. It was relationship. Some of the most meaningful conversations in history happened around a meal. Think of Esther. She's my favorite biblical hero or heroine. I mean, I love Esther and her story. And she started her encounter to change what was meant to be the destiny of destruction for her people. And she started it with an invitation to share a meal. Maybe one of the tragedies of modern life is that we've become so busy that we've forgotten how to receive food as a gift. We eat in our cars, standing over the sink, scrolling while eating, answering emails, or just barely tasting what we're eating. And then we wonder why eating never feels satisfying. I wonder if slowing down might nourish more than just our stomachs. What if the first meal after a fast wasn't rushed? What if it became almost ceremonial? Not in a religious sense, but in a grateful sense. Imagine setting your phone aside, sitting at the table, taking a deep breath, and looking at the meal in front of you, and simply thinking, Thank you. Not because every meal is perfect, and not because your life is perfect, but because nourishment itself is a gift. That one small pause changes something inside of us. It reminds us this isn't just consumption, it's stewardship, it's partnership, it's receiving what our bodies have been patiently waiting for. And perhaps that's one of the greatest lessons fasting has been teaching us all along. It's not simply how to go without, but how to receive with gratitude. Have you ever noticed that the things we crave aren't always the things we need? If you've ever stayed up way too late, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But then the next morning, your body probably doesn't crave a glass of water and a long walk outside. It craves sugar, more caffeine, something fast, something comforting, something that promises energy right now because I need to get out the door. But those cravings aren't necessarily your body asking for those specific foods. They're often your body asking for relief. And there's a difference. I think understanding that difference is one of the most freeing things we can learn. Because if every craving represented a genuine biological need, then we would have to conclude that our bodies desperately require cinnamon rolls at 11 o'clock at night, or potato chips while watching television, or ice cream at the end of a stressful day. But that's not really what's happening. Our brains are remarkable prediction machines. Every experience, every habit, every routine teaches our body what to expect. Imagine walking through your front door every evening. The television comes on, you sit in the same chair. Within minutes, you suddenly want popcorn. Right? Was it hunger? Maybe. Or maybe your brain simply connected those experiences together so many times that one automatically triggers the other. Our brain loves patterns. Patterns save energy. They allow us to drive familiar roads without even thinking about each turn, and they allow us to type without even looking at the keyboard. They allow us to recognize a loved one's face instantly. Patterns make it easier. They do. They allow us to function easier. But sometimes patterns also become prisons. If every stressful moment has always ended with food, your brain begins expecting food whenever stress appears. If every celebration includes dessert, dessert becomes associated with joy. If every lonely evening includes snacks, loneliness begins calling for snacks. The food isn't always solving the problem. It's simply become connected to the emotion. That realization can be incredibly freeing. It was for me because it meant I wasn't broken. I was patterned, and patterns can be reshaped. Not overnight, generally not perfectly, but gently, patiently, one choice at a time. I think this is one of the hidden gifts of fasting. It creates enough space to ask a question we rarely stop long enough to consider. What am I actually hungry for? Sometimes the answer really is food. Your body genuinely needs nourishment. Honor that. Eat. But sometimes the hunger is different. Maybe you're exhausted. Maybe you're grieving. Maybe you're anxious. Maybe you're overwhelmed. Maybe you've been pouring yourself into everyone else and you haven't had 5 quiet minutes to breathe. Food can't solve those kinds of hunger. It may comfort them for a moment, but comfort and healing are not always the same thing. I remember reading something years ago that stayed with me. It suggested that many of our behaviors are attempts to meet legitimate needs, just sometimes in unhelpful ways. Think about that. The need itself may be completely healthy. Rest, connection, peace, celebration, comfort, or belonging. The need is not the enemy. The question is simply, how are we trying to meet it? And that's one reason I believe fasting can become such a powerful teacher, not because it tells us food is bad, but because it gently asks, what else have you been asking food to do? Have you been asking it to calm anxiety? Have you been asking food to erase loneliness or to reward hard days, to numb disappointment, or to distract from pain? Food was never designed to carry all of that. It's wonderful and it's nourishing and it's meant to be enjoyed, but it is a terrible therapist. It's a poor substitute for sleep. It can't replace healthy relationships. It doesn't get rid of grief. It doesn't fix chronic stress. And it simply isn't built for those jobs. And yet, many of us have unknowingly handed it those responsibilities. The beautiful thing is, once you recognize that, you don't have to feel guilty. You simply become curious. Curiosity is far more productive than condemnation. Instead of saying, I have no self control, you begin asking, what was I really looking for in that moment? That's a completely different conversation. One opens the door to shame, and the other opens the door to understanding. And understanding is where lasting change usually begins. Now, there's another piece of this puzzle that's worth talking about. The modern food environment is unlike anything human beings have experienced for most of history. For thousands of years, finding food required effort. You planted it, you gathered it, you hunted it, or you prepared it. There were natural pauses, natural limits. Today, food is everywhere. Gas stations, checkout lines, office break rooms, television commercials, phone apps, vending machines, drive-throughs are open 24 hours a day. We don't even have to leave our homes anymore. Someone can bring almost any meal imaginable directly to our front door. That's incredibly convenient. But convenience also means we live surrounded by constant cues to eat. Sometimes we're responding to hunger. Sometimes we're responding to opportunity. And there's a difference. Oh, and then there's something else. Food scientists are incredibly talented people. Their job is often to create foods people enjoy eating. There's nothing inherently wrong with making food taste good, but some highly processed foods are intentionally designed to be exceptionally appealing through combinations of sweetness, saltiness, fat, texture, and flavor. These combinations can make them easy to keep eating even after we've had enough. I know, I love Doritos too. I have to stay away from them, especially the ranch flavored, because once I open a bag, especially if I have my husband sitting next to me, we can devour the whole bag because I can just keep eating them. But it's his fault, right? He's eating them faster. Or I tell myself that. Uh, it's not about blame. It's about awareness. All right. If you're swimming against a current, it's helpful to know that the current exists. So now you'll become afraid, but I don't want you to be afraid. I want you to understand why the effort sometimes feels difficult. And when we understand the environment, we stop assuming every struggle is a personal failure. It is not my lack of self-control that causes me to really like to eat a whole bag of Doritos in one sitting. It is not because I have no willpower. It is not because I have no moral code to understand that I should not eat this whole bag. No. When we understand the environment, we can stop assuming every personal struggle is a personal failure. Instead, we can begin creating environments that make healthy choices a little easier. Sometimes that's as simple as keeping fruit where you'll actually see it, preparing vegetables ahead of time, cooking at home a little more often, eating at the table instead of in front of a screen. Small changes repeated consistently. Those are the kinds of choices that quietly shape a life. And perhaps that's one of the greatest lessons fasting has taught me. Health isn't usually built in dramatic moments, it's built in ordinary ones. One meal, one walk, one good night's sleep, one prayer, one deep breath, one decision to begin again over and over and over until one day you realize you're becoming someone different. Not because of a giant leap, but because of thousands of faithful little steps. Eventually, I stopped asking myself, how long can I fast? And I started asking a much better question. Who am I becoming? Because if fasting simply teaches me how to endure hunger, I've missed its greatest lesson. If it teaches me patience, gratitude, self awareness, self discipline, and a deeper appreciation for nourishment, then fasting has accomplished something much greater than just helping me skip a meal. It's helping me shape my character. I don't think the goal was ever to become someone who needs food less. I think the goal is to become someone who appreciates it more, to receive it differently, to stop treating every meal as an interruption and begin seeing it as a gift. Have you ever watched someone who's been truly hungry? Not because they chose to fast, but because food simply wasn't available? The way they receive a meal is different. There's gratitude and reverence, there's appreciation. The meal isn't rushed, it's treasured, unless they're so hungry that they're trying to eat it quickly, but it is treasured. And I wonder if fasting gives us just a small glimpse of that perspective. Not to compare ourselves with those who experience true hunger, but to remind us how easy it is to take abundance for granted. One of the greatest blessings of living, where so many of us do, is that food is incredibly accessible. But every blessing carries a temptation. The temptation of abundance is forgetfulness. When something is always available, we stop noticing it. Think about running water, electricity, air conditioning, heat in the winter. Most days, we don't even think about them until they're gone. And then suddenly, we realize how remarkable they always were. Food can become like that. Always there, always available, always expected. Fasting gently interrupts that expectation. It reminds us this meal isn't owed to me, it's a blessing. I think that's one reason meals have historically been connected with gratitude. Across culture, across generations, people have paused before eating, sometimes with a formal prayer, sometimes with a quiet reflection, sometimes with a simple thank you. That pause changes something, not because the food changes, because we do. Gratitude has a remarkable way of transforming ordinary moments into sacred ones. A sandwich becomes more than a sandwich. A bowl of soup becomes more than soup. Fresh fruit becomes more than fruit. They become reminders that life itself is sustained one gift at a time. I think we've become so accustomed to abundance that we've forgotten how miraculous nourishment really is. Think about everything that had to happen just so you could eat today. Seeds planted months ago, rain falling, sunlight reaching the leaves, healthy soil supporting roots, farmers walking before sunrise, harvesting, transportation, distribution, people stocking shelves, and someone then preparing the meal. Thousands of events, most of which we'll never see, all quietly working together so that you could sit down and eat. That's incredible. And the older I get, the more convinced I become that wonder is one of the healthiest emotions we can cultivate. Wonder slows us down. Wonder makes us notice. Wonder turns ordinary things into extraordinary gifts. And maybe that's one of the reasons that Jesus so often taught using ordinary things like bread, seeds, vines, sheep, water. He invited people to see the sacred inside the ordinary. Maybe health works the same way. Maybe it isn't found only in expensive supplements or cutting edge technology or the newest health trend. Maybe it's also found in sleeping when you're tired, walking outside, barefoot even, and connecting with the earth, sharing meals with people you love and laughing until your stomach hurts. Have you ever done that? Drinking enough water and breathing deeply, moving your body, eating foods that nourish rather than simply entertain or fill the void, making space for stillness and taking a day to rest. We all need a Sabbath. Fasting and then receiving nourishment with gratitude. Those rhythms don't usually make headlines. They're too ordinary, too simple, too ancient. But perhaps that's exactly why they've endured. The human body hasn't forgotten how to respond to them. It's been responding to them for thousands of years. Every episode we've made in this series has brought us back to the same central idea. Your body is incredibly intelligent, not because it thinks like a human, but because it was designed with systems that constantly work toward balance, toward adaptation, toward repair, toward life. Fasting doesn't create those symptoms or systems, I'm sorry. It doesn't. It gives them room. Nutrition doesn't create those systems, it supplies them. Sleep supports them, movement supports them, relationships support them. None of these habits compete, they cooperate. They're like musicians in an orchestra. If one instrument refuses to play, the music changes. And if one instrument tries to play louder than everyone else, the music changes. Health isn't usually one instrument. It's the harmony. And perhaps that's the biggest lesson this series has been teaching me as I've researched and recorded these episodes. We've spent decades searching for the one missing thing, the one superfood, the one supplement, the one diet, the one exercise, the one answer. But what if the answer was never one thing? What if it has always been learning to live in harmony with the way our bodies were designed? That's a much slower answer, but I think it's also a much more hopeful one because harmony is something we can practice every day, one choice at a time, one meal at a time, one fast at a time, one act of gratitude at a time. And little by little, those choices begin shaping not just our health, but our lives. We become more present, more intentional, more appreciative, more aware, more alive. And isn't that what we're really after? Not simply adding years to our lives, but adding life to our years. Because one day, none of us will remember the calorie count of a random Tuesday lunch. We probably won't remember our macros or exactly how many grams of protein we ate on an ordinary Wednesday, but we might remember laughing around the dinner table, teaching our children to cook, sharing homemade bread with a neighbor, or celebrating birthdays, breaking a fast with someone we love, and giving thanks before a meal. Those are the moments that nourish something even deeper than the body. They nourish the soul. And I don't think those two things were ever meant to be separated. The healthiest life isn't simply a well-fed body. It's a well-nourished person. Mind, body, heart, and spirit living together the way I believe they were always designed to. So the next time you finish a fast, before you take that first bite, I want you to pause, take a slow breath, and look at the meal in front of you. Remember the incredible work your body has quietly been doing, and then ask yourself one simple question. How can I thank my body for all it's done? By what I'm about to give it. I think that question might change far more than your next meal. It might slowly, beautifully change your life. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. If you've been walking through the fasting project from the very beginning, thank you for making this journey with me. My hope is that these conversations don't simply change what you know, they change how you see your body, your health, and the incredible wisdom built into the way we were created. If this episode encouraged you, I'd love for you to subscribe and share it with someone who could use a little hope. You can also find more resources at my new website. You are the letters U are worthithealth.com. youareworthithealth.com. And if you'd like to dive deeper into my journey and learn more about multiple sclerosis, my book, Finally Understand Multiple Sclerosis, is available on Amazon. I'll have these in the description below if you want to just click on them. Until next time, remember this. Your body is not asking for perfection. It's asking for partnership. And every time you choose rhythms that support life, you are honoring one of the greatest gifts that we've ever been given.